Central Asia is geopolitically very interesting. We are talking about 80 million people in Central Asia, and the median age is less than 27 years. The game changer for the region, for the countries in the region, was the Russian aggression towards Ukraine. The war, when the aggression in Ukraine happened, everybody understood that this can happen elsewhere. I would say China is very actively developing the links with their Belt and Road Initiative, but also politically. The European Union is cooperating and building stronger relationship with Central Asia without hidden agendas. Kazakhstan is actually a big supplier, I think the third biggest supplier of oil to European market. Wow. Is there a new trade game coming?
Hello to everyone. Moving Europe episode 14, this time in Helsinki for the second time after a flight at 4 a.m. So if we look a bit tired, you know why. And thanks a lot to Terhi Hakala for being here with us. And today we will discuss about Central Asia and the EU relationship with Central Asia. But to start with the first question for the audience, why is Central Asia important for the European Union?
First of all, thank you for having me. Welcome to rainy Helsinki.
Like Brussels.
Yes. Why is Central Asia important? Central Asia actually is much closer to Europe than we think, even geographically. And Central Asia is a region which has a lot of potential. But they have also challenges and in the big scale, which are of interest for the European Union. Let's face it, the fact that they are bordering to Afghanistan, to more than 2,000 kilometers of common border with Afghanistan, and there are challenges which are also having implications on us in Europe. So we have to cooperate, and we want to cooperate, and the Central Asians want to cooperate. Also, having said that, there are a lot of economic interests and potential now, especially now after the war of aggression, Russian aggression in Ukraine. Some companies have really moved from Russia to Central Asia. So there is a kind of mutual interest.
Mainly to Kazakhstan, no? Like from Russia to Kazakhstan.
Yes, that's true. Yes, Kazakhstan, but also Uzbekistan now increasingly with the reform processes in place and the WTO accession process. But I mean, to other countries, I mean, there are opportunities, but of course, we have to explore them all together.
And I found the region myself extremely interesting because I have been the pleasure to be to Tashkent, to Bishkek, Astana as well. And it's also very, very diverse as a region, also from a cultural and historical background. And yourself, you work and you focus on Central Asia. How did this happen? Was a motivation of you? Is something that more happened and then the passion developed?
Well, I think, look, I started my career in the Soviet Union, so late 80s. Yes. And so I got acquainted with this region and with also with Central Asia, with Caucasus. I saw the processes of independence, of course, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Then I was serving in India. I've been dealing security policy throughout my career. So I think that when I got this opportunity to start to work in Central Asia and from the European point of view, that was an opportunity I couldn't miss, and it was really very interesting and fascinating.
And it's quite interesting because now that you have a lot of experience dealing with the region, I'm wondering a bit, is it really justified that we often refer to it as a bit as one bloc, so Central Asia, or are there very significant differences also between the countries? If you could elaborate a bit on that.
Absolutely. I think it's, of course, when we have the tendency always to talk about regions as one bloc, like the Nordic states, the Baltic states, the Caucasus, now Central Asia too. Absolutely, it is a region with 5 countries, but also we have to understand that there are 5 different countries. But it's the tendency, and of course, from the European point of view, we try to support the regional cooperation and regional development. So that's also the kind of aspect in this that we talk about Central Asia as a region.
And for somebody who has never really read much about the region, how would you describe it? What are the common denominators socially, politically, economically? What defines the region?
First of all, maybe we start by so to say, giving the names of the countries in alphabetical order, because it's also very difficult. Sometimes it's the 5 stans. It's Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. And these countries, of course, throughout the history, I mean, thousands of years, I would say, they've been neighbors one way or another. Throughout the history, and then mid-19th century, they became part of Russian Empire and subsequently, of course, part of the Soviet Union. So they've been in the same bloc, I would say. And 91, when the Soviet collapsed, they got their independence. Ever since, of course, they have been developing their own countries, their own nations, and also economies, political systems, and state structures. These countries, of course, differ from each other. 4 of them are Turkic-speaking countries, the Turkic nations. Tajikistan is different. They have a Persian background. So linguistically, the Tajik language is closer to the Persian language. So that's how they differ. They are very young countries. The demographic development is very interesting if you think that we are talking about 80 million people in Central Asia. And the median age is less than 27 years. It's less than 27 years. So it's kind of very young.
Yes.
So it's like us. We're the median.
7 no?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's increasingly young region. But also these are secular Muslim countries already from the beginning of the Islam. And they have many common features, but also different ones culturally.
Because, for example, Tashkent, in my opinion, it was very beautiful, the city, because it was this mix between the Soviet architecture, but you can also see this indeed Muslim and Islamic cultural background, and it was making, I think, quite unique.
Yeah.
But looking at today, if you could say, like, after the fall of the Soviet Union, like the power structure in the region, like who are the main actors, how strong is Russian influence, the presence of China, if you could say, what are the...
No, Russia, of course, is still the dominant big neighbor. I mean, given the fact that the Soviet collapsed only 30 years ago, so it's not, in the course of history, it's not a long time. But Russia is a strong country in the region. And of course, old times when we think about the Soviet days, I mean, all roads led to Moscow. So it was a very tight control and tight links to Moscow, of course. More and more, of course, China is in the region again. I would say China is very actively developing the links with the Belt and Road Initiative, but also politically. Then we have Turkey. As I mentioned, these countries are Turkic countries, Turkic nations. Yeah. So Turkey is building more close ties through their, bilaterally, but also through the organization of Turkic states. Mm-hmm. And these are the biggest regional powers. Of course, we have to mention Iran here, Afghanistan, but in another way, of course. But then we have other players there, and I would mention here EU as one of the main players in the region.
Like if you would put it like in a kind of, we'll do like, it's not very easy to do, but like a standing of influence, like where would you put the EU?
EU is very important. I would say that EU is, as we always say, we are the biggest donor, biggest investor, and biggest trading partner, or maybe second biggest, depends now where we are with China, but China and EU are competing there a bit. And then, of course, the US has traditionally been very much involved. Let's look at Afghanistan also, and Central Asia in a wider sense. And then increasingly, I would say, Asian countries like Japan, South Korea, and the Gulf states. So there are several actors, but the main actors, of course, are in the region, the big neighbors, and then EU.
And it's also curious because I guess that different powers try to exert influence in different ways. No, maybe for Turkey it's more through the cultural ties, which then maybe leads to economic ties. Maybe for Russia it's more the cultural vicinity from the history. Maybe for the EU it's more trade. Or do you see also in your time as EU special representative that the strategies of different power blocs diverge significantly in the region, or how do you see this?
Yes, in that sense that of course Russia considers it to be a kind of major player in the region, and Russia definitely is not giving up Central Asia very easily, because they think that they were in the same family, they have to have influence. It's political and economic influence from the Russian point of view, and security political influence. China, the same, more or less. I would say that in recent years, and especially after the regime change in Afghanistan, China has been more strongly also in the security sector. EU actually is a player which has been a long time in the region. But I think that we usually say that we have no hidden agendas. So we are there to develop our ties, to support, find mutual beneficial ways of developing this relationship, because that's, as for the mentions I reasoned in the beginning, for security, political reasons, very, very important. Turkey, absolutely, it has also trading ties. I mean, it's the famous Silk Road, let's face it, and the connectivity from east to west is very important also, as it is for China, but also for Turkey.
And here, one interesting point that I would like to know personally, because recently there has been tension between Azerbaijan and Russia, a geopolitical tension, and also between Kazakhstan and Russia since the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine. This country, mainly they stand neutral. So do you see that there is a progressive detachment from Soviet influence from the Central Asian state, or at least an attempt, or are they remaining still heavily aligned with Moscow politically?
No, there is a big difference. I think the shift is happening. There is the Russian role. I used to say already when I was the EUSR that I saw that Russian role changing, because the game changer for the region, for the countries in the region, was the Russian aggression towards Ukraine. 22, of course, we all saw the events before. I mean, occupation of Crimea and Donetsk, Luhansk, but especially February 22 changed the minds, and after that the countries in Central Asia started to diversify very quickly their foreign policy options, their connections with other countries in the region, and further on, as I mentioned, also Gulf and Asian countries. So little by little it is changing, and the region actually is building its national and regional identity. So Russian role is diminishing in certain sectors and definitely changing, and the people's hearts and minds are somewhere else.
And I think they plays a role also that it's a very young region, in the sense that if the median age is around 27, I think this can also play a role in detaching from the Soviet influence and moving towards a bit an attempt to move towards the West. This is also what I was reading and in various research, that there is a big difference also in administration between the young functionaries and officials and the older ones, that the younger, they tend to have a more Western approach. I would say they try
Yeah.
to.
I agree. I think that it is, of course, they get education. Many of them get education in West. They have opportunities to get scholarships in US, in Europe, UK. Increasingly also in Asian countries. South Korea is very active. China, of course, is also giving opportunities for studying. So. And Turkey, so there are this is exactly changing because people really are looking into other options, and let's face it, world is globalized. The connections the Central Asians and especially the Central Asian youth have, it's increasingly different. It's not, Moscow is not the only direction anymore.
And I think these dynamics are often a bit overlooked, no? Because probably in terms of geopolitics, most researchers and also most of the public discourse focuses very much on the hard power aspects. But of course, soft power and cultural exchanges are very important. And you mentioned the educational exchanges. Here I would be curious to which degree this already happens with Europe. So how many young people go to study with Europe or have some exchange programs, or how many young people are influenced by, social media about the European ideals. So maybe you could say a bit about this.
I don't have the figures, unfortunately, but they are many. I mean, throughout the years, because the states, especially Kazakhstan, but also increasingly Uzbekistan, they are also issuing scholarships for students who study abroad. And they have certain programs, to do it systematically. Then we have our programs, Erasmus Plus. We have certain other programs, where we so to say issue opportunities for Central Asians to come. But also I must say that as an EUSR, I was of course representative of the member states. So many member states offer different opportunities, even here in Helsinki. Here we have also some Central Asian students or Finnish universities in general. So year by year the numbers are growing, and that's a good and positive fact about the European direction. But as I said, there are others, of course.
Mm-hmm. And in this regard, do you feel that the European approach towards Central Asia has intensified over the last decades? How has it evolved? Because you mentioned before, okay, the region became independent in 1991 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Was there at that time already much European engagement in the area, or did it only develop gradually?
We actually, I think we so to say had diplomatic ties already since 92. And the first technical assistance representation, it was called the TASIS, if you remember those years, but it was there is, you are so young, you don't remember.
Not really.
Yeah, exactly, you were not even born. So okay, let me tell you, there was this technical assistance program for the former Soviet countries, and for Central Asia there was an office in Almaty. It opened early 90s, and that actually was the start. Little by little, we have opened then European Union delegations in all countries. Turkmenistan, Ashgabat was the last one. Just before the COVID happened, we opened a full-fledged delegation in Turkmenistan. So that we have actually had 30 years of increasing and strengthening cooperation and presence in all these countries. And then, of course, we have to add that the member states are increasingly involved. Many of them, the biggest ones, of course, opened their embassies already immediately after the collapse of the Soviet, or they covered the region from Moscow or some other countries. So I would say that that has happened, from the very beginning, of course, but increasingly so.
And any member states which have particularly close ties with the region?
The big ones always, I would say, of course, Germany, France, Italy, then many countries from Eastern Europe, eastern parts of European Union, including my own, Finland, because we used to have trade links. And so it's kind of natural that we have been more interested in that.
And the region, like, it's also very rich, and is an opportunity for the EU as well, like in terms of natural gas reserves, uranium. And can you tell to the audience what is the biggest added value of Central Asia to the European Union in terms of, indeed, from a trade perspective, for example, like what Central Asia can really net benefit the European Union?
Well, it is the, yes, as you mentioned, it is the energy products, absolutely. And nowadays, of course, when we try to diversify the energy supplies from which we usually used to have from Russia, some of us still do, but at least we try to diversify and get independence.
No names.
Names here. Independence. But in any case, so yes, Kazakhstan is actually a big supplier. I think the third biggest supplier of oil to European market. And of course, this together with Azerbaijan, I mean, is an important factor. Turkmenistan is rich with gas. Yes. I mean, the reserves are huge. I think fourth biggest in the world. So this would be an option, but so far it has not been used to that extent. But there are issues. I mean, there are products to sell, so to say, so that it's not just that the Central Asians would be in the receiving end from the European side. No, they have critical minerals and critical materials. So this is something that we are now exploring, trying to find out how to extract them and all that. So,
and how do you think that Moscow is the likely reaction of Moscow, like from, for example, an oil and gas perspective, if there is going to be this replacement with Central Asian countries that are neighboring and under previous Soviet influence? Like, how are they looking at it because of this replacement, for example, for oil from Kazakhstan to Russia? From Moscow perspective, what will they try to do to avoid this to happen if they have means?
For the time being, it has been quite smooth. There have been some incidents throughout these last years, but basically, you know, Kazakhstan is supplying through the Trans-Caspian pipeline, CPC, to a Russian port, Novorossiysk. So far, it has worked. But that is an option, of course, that if Russia looks that this is not a desirable development, so there is an option. But so far so good. So obviously they have understood that if they try to prevent the Central Asians from having trade relations or supplying energy as they did already earlier, I think that they have calculated that it will have a negative impact on their bilateral relations, of course, to block the supply changes. But of course, increasingly, Kazakhstan is looking into possibilities to supply, via Azerbaijan, via other pipelines, and this is exactly why we talk about the connectivity developments and global gateway.
Yeah, and for Moscow, this could be like a very negative geopolitical outcome. All these, the developments of the Ukraine war, also in relation to Central Asia. Sure. Do you see that they are losing power also over the region at the end of the day?
It is happening, increasingly. Of course, as I said, that Moscow is important, but definitely there is this tendency now that there are other players, there are other partners for the region, and also the countries they have understood that they have to build their own resilience, because it's clear that when the aggression in Ukraine happened, everybody understood that this can happen elsewhere. I mean, at different borders. It happened in Georgia already 2008, and it is having an impact in the thinking of the Central Asian leaders.
But do you feel that there is a real concern in these states that something similar could happen in the region, or not really?
There are many things going on, I would say. That, of course, I mean, the militarily, maybe not. But the whole point is that they have very long common borders. Kazakhstan's border with Russia is more than 7,500 kilometers.
It's the largest in the world.
It's a lot. I mean, and imagine its steppe. It's really very large.
To compare with Finland, it's 2,000.
Finland has 1,340 kilometers, and every kilometer counts.
Yeah.
So it does also in Kazakhstan.
But here's a small point. Like I think it's not understood how big Kazakhstan is as well. No, geographically, it's one of the biggest countries in the world. It's often overlooked.
It is absolutely, but also you have to remember that one part of Kazakhstan, western part of Kazakhstan, are in Europe, because the kind of border goes in the Ural Mountains. So the definition of Europe starts from there, and Kazakhstan has a European part, which is the Caspian Sea coast, and from the Ural Mountains to west.
But that's interesting, because then in theory it would be eligible for EU membership, no? As a European state, in theory you are eligible according to the treaties, no? So
Exactly. So it's interesting, but it's sometimes difficult to kind of understand. Yeah.
Here, I also like one curiosity. Like I think the added value of the European Union from these countries is like, from an economical perspective. No, from an economics perspective, it's as one of the biggest market in the world. But is there, in your opinion, an understanding of the differences of quality of life between Russian influence and the quality of lives in the European Union, if you look at the indicators? And it's one of the reasons why they are also trying to get closer to the European Union, because they understand that our economic model has better indicators for the well-being of their citizens. Do you think there is this awareness?
There is that awareness, and also, of course, the fact that, as I said, that European Union is cooperating and building stronger relationship with Central Asia without hidden agendas. We come with the package. We have our values, but we are not that demanding, and we are not trying to kind of dominate. We cooperate. We have partnerships. The Russian way of doing business is different. Let's say so. It's more on the domination side. So this is why I think this is also important for the countries, and also. They have their sovereignty, independence since 91, and they really want to keep it.
Is there a lot of Russian misinformation going on in the region?
A lot. And this is referring to your previous question about the fears or the perceptions what might happen in Central Asia next. There is already these things happening, and hybrid operations, pressure, all kind of insinuation even towards Central Asian countries, Central Asian citizens, migrant workers are not treated very well in Russia. So there are all kind of tricks and attitudes and tools which Russia can use to put pressure on Central Asian governments.
Because I think this, you mentioned an important factor that one of the key leverage of Russia is the remittances, no? Like the migrants going from, for example, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan to work in Russia, and then they bring income back home. So this, you also think it plays a big role in the bilateral relations?
It does. I mean, they have millions of migrant workers altogether. Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. And that's a factor which cannot be overlooked or ignored. First of all, it's a huge... it has huge economic impact in those countries for the families, but at the same time that is a tool, and that is a fact and tool with what Russia can use.
So just to be clear, people from the region going to Russia to work and sending back
money for their families, and then also in when we have been dealing with the security issues. terrorism and radicalization. So these people who are treated badly in Russia sometimes are definitely radicalized, and they are targeted on purpose because they are easy targets, in their sometimes very appalling conditions in Russia.
And Terhi, I'm a bit curious about your personal experience. You were you said it you special representative for the region for 4 years more or less. Can you explain a bit to the audience what exactly is the role of a special representative, and what tasks you had? What was your daily work? Walk us a bit through your last years.
Sure, thank you. It was, well, I am, as a special representative, we have several of them, in different regions. So I was appointed by the member states to represent them all together. And there's a regional mandate for the EU special representative for Central Asia. So my task was to try to improve, develop, strengthen the cooperation of the European Union with these countries. Also to support the regional cooperation in Central Asia, try to address the challenges in different sectors, I would say, security, also climate change, water issues, security in a wider perspective. Also, we have had a task to look at the developments, the reform processes, how we can assist more in democratization, also including human rights. We implemented the strategy of the European Union for the region, which is in place. Altogether, with all possible means, try to improve the relationship between European Union and Central Asia, enhance dialogue, and then also to increase visibility in the region. So, small team in Brussels, but we did a lot, and I really had a great team.
And of course, in the EU, the foreign policy is very much still in the hands of the member states. So I can imagine that a lot of your work must have been to seek consensus with the member states, right?
Sure, but I was in a very good position because all member states of the European Union were united. I mean, there was a clear consensus on strengthening, improving the cooperation with Central Asia, getting them closer to us and vice versa, finding opportunities. So I was in the lucky position. I didn't have to do that, of course, and I had very good cooperation in Brussels, visited some capitals, but more or less I focused on traveling in Central Asia. Sometimes, of course, we had to coordinate more also in Brussels because we have different institutions, as you know, also parliament, some financial institutions. So I did a lot of that kind of job, coordinating with all these actors so that we could look united in our efforts towards the region.
And how were you seeing at the time the Russia force policy of the EU, for example, from a gas perspective, since you were working indeed on Central Asian file? What was your view? You were aware, you were thinking that was a mistake to be so reliant on Russia before the invasion of Ukraine? How was seen from the member states you were cooperating with?
Look, you mean the dependence of the Central Asians?
No, the dependence of the EU on Russia.
Okay, sorry. I think that we misjudged the Russian intentions. And I was in Georgia when the war happened. I was the last head of the OSCE mission to Georgia when Russia attacked Georgia. And ever since, of course, this is a long story, as you know, so we have misjudged the Russian intentions vis-a-vis its neighbors and vis-a-vis definitely those neighbors like Ukraine and other countries. So the dependence was huge. But then on the other side, I think the thinking was that if we tie Russia to the cooperation with the West and European Union, if we are closer, if we find common denominators in trade, in energy trade, etc. So that would kind of help us to develop, of course, the political developments, and it didn't happen as you said.
Is a viable geopolitical approach in the sense that in this case I would say the outcome was not as expected, but it's something that
Yes.
it worked, and in other cases in history, like to develop a stronger trade relation, which then leads to also cultural influence, can also lead to positive spillovers. But with Russia was
I think that it was a clear in a way understanding that if we are closer, we cooperate closer, then we can in a way live side by side. But of course, after 2008, especially after 2014, we should have seen where this leads to, but we didn't. Now it was a wake-up call for everybody at 22, and we are of course rapidly diversifying our, as you said, energy supplies, etc. In the current situation.
Because you think because Ukraine was a wake-up call indeed, but you think that Georgia was a bit seen as something still far, you think?
Yeah.
Why was not a Georgia wake-up call, for instance?
Yeah, I think it was. First of all, the war was different. It lasted only some days, less than a week, and Ukraine is a massive, of course, invasion, and it's a different scale. But of course, the signs of attacking Crimea and Donetsk, Luhansk should have been interpreted in a proper way, of course.
And now, in these days, in these last years, we said that Europe has been cultivating closer ties with Central Asia overall. If you had to say it in a very short summary, what are the main pillars today of the EU's Central Asia strategy or approach?
First, I would say 3 pillars, maybe. Yes, security, political. And then economic and humanitarian, including, of course, human rights and education, all that. These are the 3 pillars. Increasingly, we are hands-on, I would say, that we have a strategy. We have a framework of agreements, strategy for the region and roadmap, how to implement it. Then we have bilateral, of course, agreements, so that the aspirations and the level of cooperation can be a bit different with different countries, but the framework is the same. And then we are hands-on. We are now investing in a lot of money in the Global Gateway project to improve the connectivity with Central Asia, building Silk Road again in a different way. But there is a big effort now also from the European side, and it should lead to a chain reaction in that sense that we definitely can improve our trade relations and economic cooperation, and then we have a kind of improved logistical routes from Central Asia.
And do you feel that there are already positive signs on the ground that these investments are paying off?
Well, yes, it's a bit early on still, but we are now approaching, and we have started this kind of real work. The EU is investing more, of course, in the kind of soft targets, but definitely we are looking into ports, port facilities, borders, customs, regulations, etc., digitalization. So it is now starting, as I always say, that big boats turn very slowly, and EU is sometimes very slow. I always try to comfort my Central Asian partners that, look, we might be very slow, very bureaucratic, but when we are on the track, when the train leaves the station, it's on the track, and now the train has left the station.
Related.
Yes.
and I think it's also important to communicate those things, because of course EU communication often focuses on the broad lines and a bit abstract concepts, with the enhanced partnership agreement also with the region. But in the end of the day, it counts what happens on the ground. No, so I think this is very good that you mentioned the ports, the customs, the digitalization, because in that's how it translates into real world differences.
It is, and what actually is remarkable also about our relations with Central Asia and these projects now is that we have the so-called Team Europe approach, which means that we are combining our forces in that sense that it's the EU institutions, it's the member states' efforts, it's business community, it's about our financial institutions, our banks, EIB, EBRD, and others. Then our partner countries, by the way, they are always welcome to join the Team Europe initiatives. And our UK friends are using that opportunity also. And then civil society is an important part of this effort. So that kind of, it's an whole of EU approach, which we take here, and I think it will pay back. It's slow, but it's getting there.
And what would you feel would be needed to improve even the EU approach from how it is now? I mean, of course, you mentioned before the involvement of the financial institutions, I guess EIB, so then the European Investment Bank, and so on. But is the system working, or could there be here and there some things to be improved?
Well, we have our bureaucracy. You cannot go around that. Definitely, it takes sometimes a lot of times, to get the tenders and the evaluations and this and that. But I have seen a very good improvement here and positive development. So as I said, that's big boats turn slowly. But we have started. We have the agreements in place, all that. So definitely. It is on the track, and the cooperation is going on. Our colleagues, for instance, in the Commission have been working very, very well for this Global Gateway project. Of course, the question is then we have other actors in the region that what kind of influence the EU will have, but I think that we are increasingly seeing the benefits also for South Caucasus now that Armenia and Azerbaijan have concluded different phases of their peace process. The peace deal is not there yet, but they have opened already communication channels. Turkey, Armenia normalization process is going on, and all that. So little by little, it's coming, and South Caucasus is an important piece of this.
What is your view on this? On the peace deal negotiation between Armenia and Azerbaijan? Like in your perspective, is it a positive agreement?
Well, I think it's going on. It is an agreement which they have reached now after the war, and of course, from my perspective, of course, Azerbaijan regained its territorial integrity, and now they are normalizing their relationship. They are putting the border in place, all kind of agreements and development. So I think that it gives a very good opportunity for the whole region. Both countries, Armenia, Azerbaijan, also Georgia, regionally, to improve the ties, to have economic development also, and political stability.
It's like the Armenia for me is a very interesting case because it's geopolitically surrounded by, I would say, at least non-aligned neighbors. Between you have Armenia, you have Iran, you have Turkey. Like, what is the EU stance on the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, like pragmatically, and also towards Armenia itself?
No, Armenia has. I think that we all are. We are positively kind of surprised that it is going very well. I mean, honestly speaking, I think at least I am personally, I've been dealing with that, early years. Again, those years you were not born yet, but still I was in the Minsk process. It was a very devastating long conflict, which really led to a lot of misery and the economic developments also in the region. So the peace process is a positive one. I am very happy that they have now advanced in that process, and they are about to sign the agreement, hopefully very soon. So what it means is that Armenia has expressed its willingness to get closer to the EU, and the answer has been very positive. So there's a lot of course, support and programs in Armenia. Azerbaijan has not been interested, and if you have followed lately, it was very, of course, interesting now that Azerbaijan and President Aliyev has been invited as an honorary or full-fledged member to the consultative meetings of the Central Asian leaders. Azerbaijan has been already for years very much cooperating closely with the Central Asian countries. And as a link, of course, towards West, Azerbaijan is in a key position in this connectivity plans and projects. And now it is also more politically cooperating with Central Asian leaders in a way officially, so that it's a full-fledged member of the consultative meetings. What will it mean in the end? I don't know, too early to say. Let's see what will happen. But I think that all in all, in this wider region, Central Asia, South Caucasus, we will see more cooperation in the coming years altogether. And also Turkey, because Turkey has a land border with both Armenia and Azerbaijan, and Georgia, by the way, also.
Key actor as well in the conflict, And just one last point on the partners that you mentioned that can indeed join Team Europe and the EU. Like, do you see a shift in the US approach to Central Asia in the new Trump administration?
Now I see again. I think that it's because when I took over the job as EUSR, 1 month after that, what happened was that the regime change in Kabul happened. The coalition forces left, and Kabul collapsed. I mean, in a day. So we all saw that happening, and that was quite a worrying moment, to be honest, for the region also. So after that, I saw a kind of a bit silent period in the U.S. participation. Not silent in that sense that they were, of course, continuing some of their programs in Central Asia, but the fact that they left from Afghanistan summer 21 and happened how it happened. So I saw a bit kind of decline in their presence and in their activities in Central Asia. Now I think it's back. I mean, the Central Asian leaders were in Washington. There was a summit meeting with Trump, and I am quite confident that this is going to revive in that sense, that connection, and they are also interested in Central Asian critical materials, as we all are. But I think that this is also a kind of economic relationship also, and then of course I'm sure that the current administration in Washington is of course interested in the Chinese moves in the region. So it's
ultimately it's a power politics question, no? Also, like
Central Asia is geopolitically very interesting. It has always been. You remember that years back we were talking about the Great Game, in 19th century, the Great Game, and then people were already referring to that when Afghanistan had its changes and the Taliban regime came back. That is there a new Great Game coming? Well, I would describe it in a different way, but it is definitely in the focus of geopolitical interests.
We talked a lot about outside influence in the region. How about the relations between the Central Asian countries? Is there a strong alignment on most policy and political questions? Are there strong divergences? Do they consider themselves allies of each other? Not really.
No, increasingly so. Look, when I started as an EUSR 21, I actually was a bit worried what will happen because we had several internal, intra-regional incidents and we faced violence. We saw violence. We had the events in Kazakhstan in January 22, just before the aggression to Ukraine. Then we had events in Gorno-Badakhshan in Tajikistan, violence. We had Karakalpakstan, Uzbekistan. We had continuous shooting, border disputes and shooting at the Tajik-Kyrgyz border. We've come a long way. The Central Asian countries have found each other in another way. The regional cooperation and the regional rapprochement has happened during these years, and it's the kind of regional resilience which they are building also. Of course, they cannot agree on all issues. As good neighbors, as Nordic neighbors, we were speaking about the regions. We all have our issues with the neighbors and all that, but definitely there is a big positive development now. The border issues have been solved. Kyrgyz-Tajik border is agreed upon. Demarcation, the border deals also with Uzbekistan. There is a peace deal from that point of view. And situation has calmed down in that sense, but at one point it looked very worrying. I mean, that how things will escalate. The consultative meetings of the leaders, as I mentioned, they have them on a yearly basis, and now also including Azerbaijan, where they are setting up the agendas for the following year, more or less, and then the cooperation also, which we try to promote in economic ways, building now these logistical hubs, but they are doing it themselves. They have realized that it's better to do it, and they are stronger together in that sense, that regional approach is important.
One very interesting border is, for me, Afghanistan and Uzbekistan.
Yes.
Like, I would like to understand, like, the US invasion in Afghanistan, how was it seen on the Uzbekistan side, and also on the border, like how much from a European perspective of terrorism, security, and also cocaine inflows from Uzbekistan. Is it really an hot spot to look from a European perspective?
It is. It is. I mean, although I must say that the border guards, they do a great job. I mean, they absolutely, they are on the front line in Central Asia. But let's face it, there's more than 2,000 kilometers of common border with Afghanistan. Turkmenistan is more desert. Uzbekistan is shortest, but it's also very well taken care of. Then we have a long border between Tajikistan and Afghanistan, which is 1,400, like Finnish-Russian border, so long, even longer. And it is very complicated terrain. It's mountainous, very, very narrow rivers, shallow rivers. So it's very, very complicated to control. So they are doing a great job. It is an issue. When the regime change happened, I could see the worry. And they pronounced it also very clearly what happened, and so they have done a lot, of course, themselves. International community has tried to help, and I definitely hope that we will do more, strengthen the borders, equipment of the border guards, etc., to cooperate with them. And the heroin flows from Afghanistan, of course, we see it. We see, of course, trafficking of arms, trafficking of human beings. So it's, and also the radicalization. They have terrorist groupings also in the northern parts of Afghanistan, and mainly, of course, they are at the Uzbek and Tajik border areas in the northern provinces of Afghanistan. So there's a lot we have to do. This situation, obviously, and these challenges continue for years to come. It's not over.
Of course.
It's not under control, from the Afghan side, but this is exactly one of the very, very clear reasons and questions why the European cooperation with the
It's important.
is important with these countries, because they do a lot in the front line, and these issues have implications on us.
You can also learn a lot from their insights on the ground.
We have learned a lot, and we are very happy that we have been able, because they know, of course, very well their neighbors, and absolutely they have thousands of years of kind of neighborhood there, and they know them very well. They know them on personal level, etc. And I must say that we should listen to the Central Asians more in this respect.
But so you will say that there are cells of Al-Qaeda physically in Uzbekistan as well, in your opinion?
Well, I'm not saying that in Uzbekistan, but across the border.
Across the border.
There is, of course, it is. And the threat is not just for the countries in the region in that sense, but they have different terrorist groupings which are targeting also politically the Central Asian countries. So, and that is definitely a worry for them, but it is a global worry, because the terrorist groupings and the terrorist training on the territory of Afghanistan, of course, is a threat for all of us.
But for these security considerations, I'm wondering, it has to rely on intelligence, right, to a certain degree also, and by far the strongest power in this regard is the US. So I'm wondering to which degree the EU still relies on the US for getting this data.
Well, look, we have also very much, European countries have very good services also. I would not underestimate them, and there are countries who are very much cooperating also on questions of terrorism and radicalization. With the EU has no such structures. We can have certain kind of dialogue, and we can have certain cooperation, but of course this is a different ball game, isn't it, for the as for the European Union? But many member states have very good cooperation and dialogue with the Central Asians, exchange of information and all that. So there is an opportunity always. But US, absolutely, you are right. They are very important partner in these questions.
So for the intelligence community, are you saying that it still relies in the EU most heavily on the member states, so more than for EU central structures?
Yes.
It could be a possibility to create stronger EU capacities, no, in this regard?
Definitely there is space for that. We have a certain cooperation, of course, but it's more on strategic level. So the kind of heavy stuff lies within the member states. I mean, the kind of this detailed information flows, etc., and heavy stuff of intelligence, absolutely.
And I think here there is a digitax at the moment with the with the data hub. I think there will be I think if you inside our directorate in the Commission, the Taxation Customs Union, I think from 2027 or 2028 there will be centralization of data storage at the European level. So probably that could be the way to go for intelligence. I imagine that you centralize all the analysis of data, all this data in one point.
But this concerns more customs information, no? Rather than...
Still, I think also border control on terrorism, I would say.
Frontex also, of course, is cooperating and all that. But of course, when we speak about national security of each state and so to say, there is cooperation in these issues, but to a certain extent, of course, it definitely lies within in the member states. So it's cooperation is done among them, but to what extent it's up to them. So I think we are still far from that scenario.
And just one point on this intelligence aspect, from a Central Asian perspective, their intelligence services, if you can assess, are they very effective? Are they still very influenced by the KGB influence on the region? How they act?
They are very professional, let's say. I mean, they are very professional. And of course, again, 30 years of is not too much. That generation is still there who got trained, educated. But in these issues, it's not necessarily bad because that is terrorism is really something that kind of demands a lot of contacts also globally, and all that. But they are developing, of course, their own systems and cooperating with different countries in this sector also. But how it is, I have not been so much in the intelligence. I know the actors, but
You're not in the intelligence community.
Yeah, and if I would be, I wouldn't tell you all that.
Yeah, exactly.
But they are very. That much I can say that they are very effective and they do a great job.
Yeah. And to return maybe for a moment to the domestic politics also of the region. Because I think the at least the portrait people often get is that the governance system are still largely authoritarian, at least with authoritarian tendencies. Is this true to state, or is it an overgeneralization?
Well, they have very strong leaders in Central Asia, absolutely, and the systems are built like that. The structures are built like that they have a very, very authoritarian structure, as you say, yes, and strong leaders. Look, there are also reforms, definitely reform processes, and for instance now in Kazakhstan they have introduced reforms in their legislation. There will be a referendum how to change the bicameral parliament to unicameral. So. And then also in Uzbekistan you have changes, but they are of course very slow. Is it what do we call democratization, etc.? We recognize the shrinking civic space, and also limitations for the freedom of media. Definitely, it is happening. But we also are in a constant dialogue with these countries. Sometimes this is kind of argued that in this kind of security situation you need more control over this. But the counter argument from our side and from my side is always that resilient society needs civil society actors and media and oppositioners. But so far the structures are really quite strongly under the leadership.
Do you feel that these arguments from your side, they are listened to, or do they fall on deaf ears?
We have had always a very good dialogue, and these issues are discussed because we have reached that kind of partnership with Central Asian countries that we can agree to disagree on certain issues. And of course, human rights are universal, and these things we raise all the time, and we discuss them. But these processes are of course slow and in the hands of the leadership and the politicians. Yeah. So we try to influence.
And are you optimist, about this future democratic outlook?
Look, I've seen positive also development. We are living in a period, yearly 16 days of activism, on violence against women or domestic violence. In a couple of years both Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan have criminalized the violence against women. There are steps which have been taken, so we have to also recognize these. They maybe not are so many as we would like to see, but there are changes happening. And we have to also recognize and give credit for those steps the countries are taking. But I always try to say that democratization is absolutely a process. You cannot import democracy to any country and against the will of the political leadership. But there are changes in in Central Asia already.
And here I think Afghanistan can teach us some lessons on on importing, trying to export democratization processes, no?
Yes, look, I mean, I always say that you can try to export. I mean, that we say that, okay, this is the ideal build of a society, do as we do in Europe. It doesn't work like that. And you cannot import it, you know.
But here I think one added value, again, is that the population is very young. So do you think this is something that...
Sure.
Are you positive also mainly about that? Because they are young generation, the majority of the population is very young, so they have a different approach, you can see, towards democracy, women's rights. Do you see a difference?
Yes, and with education. With education, I mean, of course, as I said, that, you know, this young population brings opportunities, but also huge challenges, because it's about education, how to give education, how to create jobs for everybody. What is the future of this big young population in each country or in the region? Where do they find their future? So, but definitely there is a change towards, and with the connections, as we spoke in the beginning, that the opportunities to travel, to also to get education abroad. So it all has an impact on people's mind.
And the education in the countries, there it's improving, you feel?
Also, yes, I must say that is, of course, a big challenge. And you have an increasing population. You have to kind of create that education and widen the educational sector. They are doing a lot. Of course, they have a lot of kind of international contacts. But I would say that, for instance, Uzbekistan is a good example of a country where a president himself is very much stressing the need to develop the educational sector, opening schools, opening universities, creating possibilities. And also European Union is trying to help here, not just with the scholarships, but we have also certain programs for educational purposes, and we have actually a quite recently established program. It's called Daria, and it's for vocational training, because that is sometimes missing, you know, as in all our societies, isn't it? That you don't only need people with higher education, you need also, really professionals and skills development. So this is where we also try to help and assist and find new programs for that.
Here, if you could say, I don't know how much is possible, but the best performer among the region, if you look at indicators of education and the human rights, if there is a country that particularly stands for progresses.
Well, maybe I stick to more to this kind of regional. I think they all do different things in a different way. Of course, we have been, and this has been discussed a lot, that we have been very much worried about the developments in Kyrgyzstan, especially because Kyrgyzstan used to be the beacon of democracy in that region. But there again, I mean, they have elections actually now tomorrow. New parliamentary elections, early presidential elections next year. And with the new constitution, let's hope they can also get things moving again into more positive direction. But I would say that they have different economic opportunities to develop the education sector. And maybe I just mentioned Uzbekistan, which is doing a lot for education now. But they have also the biggest population and biggest youngest population. So the need is very, very crucial here. So it's but I want to mention Uzbekistan, not maybe the best, but in that sense that, you know, as an example, with very good progresses and big activities.
You mentioned the elections. Is there real political competition between parties?
Interesting. There are parties, and there is now there are some limitations, of course, but the interesting thing here is that they have a new constitution and election law, and they actually, the new parliament now should and will have at least 30% of women in the new parliament. And this, from my point of view, is very good because they have a quota. They have a quota for women, which is minimum 30%. And this is good step always that we have, all citizens and also kind of involved, and the women's participation in the work of parliament is always very important, as we saw in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, as I said, when they criminalized the domestic violence. So it will always have an impact, and usually it has a positive impact on education also and healthcare.
And here I have a question. In the region, what's the role of religion?
The role of religion is you know that they are predominantly Sunni Muslims in the region. It's secular after the Soviet collapse. I mean, they have, of course, during the Soviet years, the religion was banned or not exercised, but then when they got their independence, it developed again, and they got back their religion and religious habits. But I would call the countries secular Muslim countries, and it's a good example of a secular society. They have different religions, of course, in small parts are Orthodox, etc., but mainly predominantly Muslim, but very, very secular, I would say.
So overall, not a huge influence on the mindset of people or on their cultural ways of thinking, or
no, I think it is a secular in that sense that it is part of the society's work. But the negative side of recent developments is, of course, that there is a lot of radicalization happening, and foreign powers also try to use this kind of and foreign groupings, as I said, try to radicalize young people also with the religious pretexts and means. So, and that is increasingly a worry, of course, as it is in many other places, because religion is a very handy tool in the hands of those who really want to kind of radicalize or
And so you're a bit worried about the developments in Afghanistan as well that can have an impact on the secularization of them.
And through and also from Afghanistan, we see movement which is trying to have an impact, a negative impact. So that's why the cooperation in security sector and also improving socio-economic conditions for people who are living in poverty in those countries is very, very important to give them economic opportunities.
Because I think radicalization is often a result of lack of a future, no?
Yes, but
future perspective.
Yes, and luckily, and I have to give the credits to the leaders of this of Central Asian countries that they all recognize this. They all recognize it very well.
We did an episode a couple of weeks ago in Berlin with Martin Frick, who is director at the UN World Food Programme, and he told us that in Northern Africa and in the Sahel region, actually programs to support food security and economic opportunity have a huge impact on extremism and the ability of these groups to have an influence on people, because if people have the feeling that they can do something with their lives, they're less less inclined to being extremized.
True, and this is exactly the socio-economic situation is a key here. Also the kind of vision for the future, and that is the challenge. Absolutely, Central Asian countries are struggling with, and it's a kind of in a way run for opportunities that you really have to improve the economic situation in the country, and at the same time take care of the external borders, and in this the new technologies are of course being used, and we all know that the social media is having a big impact also in that, and young girls have been targeted to radicalize them through the religion, and that's happening too.
So how is the economic situation in these countries? Is there GDP growth? Is there a lot of innovation? What's the what's the comparative advantage of the region in an economic sense? Which sectors are they focusing on?
A lot of on services also nowadays, and of course, as I said, they are rich in raw materials. Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan are already upper middle income countries. Of course, the wealth is distributed unevenly. I mean, and definitely there's a big difference. They had already a different point of departure after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So where the industry was in Kazakhstan, or the connectivity, the railway construction. So it was kind of a different situation from a very mountainous Tajikistan or Turkmenistan with desert. Also, the opportunities are different, of course. Uzbekistan has introduced huge reforms after the current president Mirziyoyev came into power, and Uzbekistan started to open up. So the economic opportunities are increasing with these developments. Uzbekistan is joining WTO. Also, Turkmenistan has started the process. So their kind of integration into WTO, global trade, market economy, and all that. So it's happening. Maybe Kazakhstan is the most advanced in the current situation. It's the leader in economic terms also.
Yeah, because I think the GDP of Kazakhstan per capita is very close to Russia.
It is, absolutely.
Even slightly higher. On this I may be wrong.
I think so, and they will move on very rapidly. They will develop very rapidly. Kazakhstan, I can see that happening. Of course, China has also a big impact there, because China is also increasingly having economic ties with all these countries. But then you have countries, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, are lagging behind. They are the poorest countries of the region, as we mentioned, and that's, of course, is reflected in the huge number of migrant workers. Then Turkmenistan is a bit separate. It has been quite isolated from the region. They have their own way of doing things. But I would say that there is huge potential if they can use it. And that's why definitely these links with and connectivity with the neighborhood are important.
And are migrant workers then also being attracted to Kazakhstan as a bit the regional hub, or not so much?
Look, to a certain extent there is this tendency. For instance, from Uzbekistan, from Karakalpakstan region, which is kind of the region, which is the huge region, biggest region in Uzbekistan, and close to the Kazakh border, and around the Aral Sea area. Nukus is the capital. So yes, Karakalpaks many times they move to migrate to Kazakhstan. But there are also other, of course. Kazakhstan will become most probably very attractive in this respect also from neighboring countries.
And one curiosity you have about the social structure in Central Asia, because one aspect of Russia is that you have a very strong oligarchy. Do you also see this in Central Asian states, that there is a strong power of oligarchy, and this inequality is because you have a very small number of oligarchs having a large wealth, or is not like Russia in this extent?
They have that. They have that also in that sense. Not to that extent maybe, but I would say that they have their big businessmen. All of them.
Yeah, in the energy more.
Yes, and of course I think it is the difference is the standard of living. First of all, is very different in capital city vis-a-vis countryside or smaller cities. So the capital cities are well developed and they have all the opportunities. Also other bigger cities like in Kazakhstan, let's face Almaty is the former capital, so it is a big business hub altogether. Shymkent, all these countries. But in countries like Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, you have very, very big differences between countryside and the capital.
And do you see a financial hub in the region that can be competitive with Moscow in terms of financial power in a single city, or we are still far from that?
Well, I think that Kazakhstan will approach very quickly, very soon. Of course, Moscow is much bigger in that sense, and it depends now what kind of situation we have after the war. But I would say that Kazakhstan has all the opportunities, and so does of course Uzbekistan also, but it's coming a bit behind because it was so closed society until 2016. But I can see that Central Asia is developing, and with the help of the countries which it is partnering with.
And I'm very curious to see how Russia will try really to drag this process a bit backwards. In particular for Kazakhstan, I'm very interested, but this I think we will just see.
No, let's see. I think that, and I hope, to be honest, that that Russia has also understood that with pressure you cannot get friends. That it's like, and I think that they have a bit understood it also, because if you just put pressure and you try to force things on your friends, it's backfiring.
And do you, in the perspective of the Central Asian countries, how they view, Russia, China, the EU? I mean, the EU is often described a bit as this benevolent giant. No, is this the perception also in the region?
Yeah, I think it is in that sense that yes, that we. But in a way that we are trusted partners, in that sense that we are there without hidden agendas, and we are there for the long term, and there is a long-term commitment which we have now in our relationship with the region. We are not trying to gain politically. We are. It's not our spheres of interest. We are not putting pressure. It is. We want to be there kind of from the strategic point of view, and we want to partner with the Central Asia, but in the kind of usual meaning of spheres of interest, it's in a negative way. I want to say that in a negative way, it's not that, but it is a strategic partnership where it is beneficial for both. Usually when you talk about strategic interest or sphere of interest, it is always something negative for the one who is in the sphere.
And how is the US seen?
I think very positively. I think very positively, because of course the Central Asian countries want to balance. They want to have friends globally, diversifying their contacts, their opportunities, their trading partners, and also political partners. Let's say we are operating in global context, UN, all that. So it is a positive also, I mean, I think we all want to be kind of working with the US too.
Because I think it's interesting of the region that they have this multi-vector diplomacy approach, that they want to engage with different partners. But do you think it's sustainable in the long term? Because the influence of the EU and the US versus the influence of Russia and China, they are still very different and also a bit conflicting geopolitical powers. So do you think in the long run it will be sustainable to try to have this partnership balance between these forces that among themselves?
Yes, and I think this is, absolutely in that sense that they are now balancing very well, and they are kind of having a very good balance, I think, in their diversified foreign policies. And it's, of course, up to them to choose their partners. I mean, this is the starting point, of course, that, they choose their partners. But I think that here also, they also have understood that the European Union and our view is that we are not putting conditions on them, that we are not telling the Central Asians that you cannot have relations with Russia or China, that it's up to them, and we are there as an additional balancing actor and partner for them. And I think this is highly appreciated also by the Central Asian countries.
And it's very curious to see how the world changes as well, no? Because if you think about it 40 years ago, like in a framework of Cold War, you would not have such an opportunity to diversify among influences.
And in any case, let's face it, their geopolitical but also geographical position is complicated. And it's better to be friends, better to have good relations with your immediate neighbors, isn't it? If the neighbor allows it. If it doesn't, or if it's not beneficial for you, then you have to reconsider. But this is the situation where Central Asians are. They have to have access to the seas also, and they have to have partnerships.
And does China put conditions like on? You say the EU does not put condition on. You cannot have political relationship with other powers, but does China put? Because Russia, I guess it puts a bit, but China itself is pressuring this country to do not interact with the EU, the US?
I haven't heard, to be honest. I haven't heard that they would do the same, because let's face it, it's, as you mentioned, the world is quite interesting and changing rapidly also. That when we talked about originally, years ago, about the global gateway and the plans to build a kind of corridor and enhance the corridor through Central Asia to China, the idea was really to do it together with China. Then things changed. China is having their plans, of course, for the Belt and Road Initiative, and this is one thing. And they are, in a way, building the network from their point of view and for their own purposes, also going south. Then, okay, now we are building it from west to east, and they from east to west, and I can see that we are not overlapping. I mean that it's kind of complementary for the time being, and I haven't seen, and in my contacts with the Chinese interlocutors, they are definitely not putting pressure and saying or criticizing us being active. More, I would say that they would like to coordinate a bit what we are doing and how, but it's politically in the current situation we coordinate as much as we can, but for the time being, so I would say that it's not kind of excluding each other, and from the Central Asian point of view, it's positive. I mean, if you get the kind of contacts from China, yes, and then in any case, we are not building the road to China, but we are building the road to Central Asia, and all the networks benefit Central Asians and also us. And for the future, who knows, who is using all that, all those corridors and pipelines then?
Yeah, and the global gateway financing. Do you see that it's something which can be viewed, so to say, at the same level as the Belt and Road Initiative, or is it still much smaller than Chinese investment?
It's much smaller. Of course, China has big money in the current situation, but of course then we have to also see what is implemented, because sometimes in the global game you see huge pledges and then the implementation lags behind. So let's see what will happen. But there are issues which are happening already. China is very active. I've been traveling extensively through Central Asia. So I saw the Chinese constructing roads on the Pamir Mountains. I've seen them constructing railways now. I mean, they are building a railway from through Kyrgyzstan to Uzbekistan and through Iran. So there are, this, but then in the end, what can be realized, because these are very important and very expensive projects also. So it takes years and a lot of investments also.
And I would say that now we are heading towards the conclusion.
Mhm.
It was first of all, very interesting episode because it's a region that is a bit often behind the mainstream lines, but it's super interesting to me. And but usually we conclude with a question to the guest that we like to ask: how would they like to move Europe? So in the framework of the EU Central Asian relationship, how would move Europe towards a better relationship with Central Asia that can impact daily life of EU citizens?
I think that the Central Asians are now a very good example of strong cooperation. That in the times of difficulties, and when you travel in a foggy weather, geopolitically or politically, as we do also, I think it's important to understand that we have to be united. And Central Asian countries and Central Asian developments, leaders and political leadership is in that situation where they really tighten their cooperation, and they have understood that they are stronger together. So I think that they can be a very good example also now for today's Europe to be united in our endeavors also for the future, because the weather is foggy.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. It was a difficult question.
Thanks a lot, Terhi.
Thank you.
And I think
Thanks
now we
a lot.
can
Thank you.
enjoy these little snacks that you brought from Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan.
Thank you.